What is going on today, everybody? It's Buddy, and in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I took this non-drivable, beautiful classic pickup and turned it into thousands of dollars of profit. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Buddy, and I make videos on the entire process I use to buy and sell cars and make a full-time living doing it. So if you want to learn how to get profitable vehicles at low prices, how to fix them up and sell them and make a whole lot of money on the back end, be sure to subscribe now so you don't miss anything. Right now, I'm about to take you guys on the entire car flipping process from how much I knew I should buy a car for, how much money I had to put into it, how much I sold it for, and ultimately how much profit I made. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So I was doing my normal thing, scrolling through AutoTempest.com looking for deals when this bright red truck caught my eye. It was a 1995 Nissan hardbody with 167,000 miles for $5,000. Now, I know from experience these trucks are super reliable and they're actually going up in value in the past few years. They're getting harder and harder to find in good condition, and usually all the hardbodies I've seen are really beat up or they have a lot of aftermarket junk on them. So to find one of these stock in good condition is not a super common thing. So I clicked the link and I checked out the pictures. They seem to be in really good shape. The paint seemed pretty nice and even from what I could tell in the pictures, and it didn't look to have any fading. The rims did look original and didn't seem to have any aftermarket lift kit. Someone definitely looked like they took good care of this little truck. So going to the description, it read Nissan hardbody with 167,000 miles, V6, which is the engine, extended cab. It starts up fine, just doesn't have any brakes. Everything else works and it needs to be towed. So reading this, I'm going to instantly assume a few things here. First is that the seller is not mechanically inclined. Usually brakes are a fairly easy fix, especially on older vehicles like this. They don't even have something called ABS, so it kind of makes it really simple to diagnose a brake issue. Second thing is that they probably either don't care to fix the truck or they don't have the money to, especially if they're insinuating all that's wrong with it is the brakes, which in my case is good because that means there's definitely room for negotiation. So I want to see what these trucks are going for nowadays because they're starting to get to a point where they're almost considered a classic, and especially a stock one in good shape. Now these trucks are getting kind of hard to find, especially in good condition. So I pulled up AutoTempest again to see how much they were going for nationwide. I'll talk about that a bit more and how it helps with searching Facebook Marketplace in a minute. I found one here for $4,000, but it was a single cab and it had some faded paint. Another single cab that had a 4-cylinder engine in decent shape. Remember, the one we're looking at is a 6-cylinder engine. So after a while searching, I figured since this thing is a 6-cylinder and it's extended cab and it's in pretty nice shape, if I can get this thing real cleaned up and running beautiful, I could probably get $5,500 minimum for it and possibly even a bit more with the right guy. So I shot him a message asking if he still had it and if it was definitely not drivable. He said, no way I can drive this thing home. I asked if it had any other issues besides what was mentioned in the description, and he started listing things like the headliner, the speakers, the door handle was broken, and then I asked a question that I always ask, and that's if he had any wiggle room on the price. He responded with yes, so that's great news from the start. Now, I'm not going to shoot him any lowball offer over text. That's a really good way to blow the deal. I'm going to wait to see it in person to hit him with a nice solid offer. It was only 30 minutes for me, so we set up a time to see the truck. So now, let's go check this thing out in person and see if we can make some money here on this cool little truck. Now, on the way to see the truck in person, I want to talk to you guys about what to bring with you briefly. First things first is an OBD reader. I'll leave some links to some OBD readers at different price points that I personally use and I highly recommend. The next thing is cash. Never show up empty-handed to a car deal. To make a deal happen, at the very, very minimum, you want to bring a few $100s to make a deposit on it. If you see a car or truck you really want and you kind of kick the idea around and go home, it could be gone by the next day. Do not think the seller is going to wait around on you. If they get cash in their hand, it's going to get sold. So lock the deal in if it's something that you really want, even if it's just a couple $100s. And the last thing I want to talk to you guys is about the site I was talking about before, AutoTempest.com. For you guys who saw my last car flipping video with the BMW M3, I did find it on AutoTempest.com, and I actually chatted with them and they agreed to sponsor this video. Now, this is not going to be a regular boring video sponsor plug. I'm going to show you guys real quick how the site works, and if you're in the market for a new personal car or you're looking to get into car flipping, this site is going to help you save or make some extra cash. So in the tabs here, you can search used cars or you can search new cars. So we'll click BMW on the make, and for the model, we'll click M3, enter in my zip code, and we'll set it to 1,500 miles for now, and I'll go to advanced search since I want to search the E36 generation. So check this out. It's going to show us listings for all M3s in this generation from all the major sites like cars.com, eBay, TrueCar, and more. Now, the really cool thing I like best about this site is you can search national results from Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. So for example, let's click on Marketplace and I'll show you what I mean. So here you can search the Southeast region, the South, the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Texas area, and the Rocky Mountains all separately. Or you can even do a national search and hit this button here. So now you'll see that it opened up all the tabs and you literally get every single BMW M3 from this generation on all of Facebook Marketplace with one click. This is super convenient if you're looking for the best possible deals, especially if you're looking for a somewhat uncommon car. This exact method is the method that I actually use to find this Nissan hardbody as well. I don't usually use the Facebook app, but I just search everything through AutoTempest because it's a little more streamlined. Now you can do the same thing here with Craigslist. Just hit the Craigslist button and you can either search a region or you can click the button at the top for national search again. Since I found this website, it's been a complete game changer for me on finding deals. So huge shout out to AutoTempest.com for helping make videos like this possible. And be sure to check them out in the description below using the link. So upon arriving at the seller's house, I was pretty pleased with the condition of the paint. It looked good in pictures, but man, it looked good in person. It looks like this thing just got a fresh paint job. And I can tell from experience this was not a cheap paint job either. Only issue with the paint is it looks like someone forgot to secure this toolbox and it slid up and down on the tailgate, scratching the tops of it pretty bad. But other than that, the paint looked awesome. Also on the interior, I noticed the broken door handle that the guy told me about. It looks like someone tried to yank it a bit too hard and it cracked the bracket holding it to the door. Now also something that was pretty unfortunate is that the tires were really shot out. You can even see there's almost metal starting to fray out of these wheels. Tires are obviously a fairly easy thing to swap out, but man, are tires getting more and more expensive these days. And the last thing I noticed here on the exterior was a small dent here on the passenger side. It looks like maybe a shopping cart dent or something, but all in all, the exterior looked awesome. The chrome looked to be new as well as the headlights. The front of this thing looks super clean. So now it's time to check out the interior. And the very first thing I noticed is that the speaker cover was missing on the driver's side door, and the passenger side had literally no speaker at all. But the seller told me he got new speaker covers, so all I really needed to do was swap out the speakers. Now the second thing I noticed is that there was no steering column cover. Obviously it's not that hard to pop a cover on, but for older vehicles, parts like this can get pretty hard to find. Also, the headliner was not only missing, but the cardboard sheet that the headliner actually hangs on was completely missing. All that was left was a bare metal roof, which was not going to be cheap to get everything fabricated. Also, the center console lid was completely torn up, so this thing was in desperate need of some reupholstery work to say the least. Now over here on the floor, it did have some white mold growing, and that is pretty common for vehicles that have been sitting here in Florida. If you're a subscriber and you've seen the other car flip videos, you're gonna remember that both the Highlander from episode 4 and the Jeep from episode 5 had white mold growing in them from sitting. Not a big deal if you know how to kill it, and I'll show you guys that later. The dash didn't have any major tears, there was no pieces missing like AC vents. It did have a little bit of normal wear, but nothing abnormal for a 26-year-old truck. It was also pretty dirty, and there was white hair everywhere. The owner definitely had some white fluffy dog in this thing a lot. Now one cool thing about these old trucks is that they have these sideways mini seats in the back. Definitely don't look too comfy, of course. So both the interior and exterior needed a little bit of love, but nothing that I couldn't handle. So now it's time to see if she starts. The seller said it started right up, so let's see. I turned the key and it started right away, which was really nice. But the first thing I noticed is that the brake pedal goes straight to the floor. For you guys who are a little more mechanically inclined, you know how brakes work. The brake pedal actually compresses a liquid called brake fluid, and that hydraulic pressure is what squeezes the brake pads on the brake disc. There was zero pressure in this thing, so it was definitely not safe to drive home. The engine sounded good and it shifted without any clunks, so I was confident it would drive without any major issue. I also gave the suspension a quick peek and everything looked to be in decent shape, so no big deal. Now besides the brakes, I did notice the RPM gauge didn't move at all. Hopefully it's just a fuse, but for sure that's not a deal breaker and I could figure that out down the road. So I took her around the neighborhood going about 20 miles per hour maximum, since I was still able to use the brakes to slow down, but they were definitely not brakes that were ideal for any regular traffic situations. The truck drove really smooth on the test drive and everything seemed decent on the truck, and I knew if I can get the brakes fixed, all that would be left is some cosmetic work on the interior and exterior and she would be looking sharp. So now I concluded that I definitely want to make an offer on this truck, so it's time to see how much we can get it for. Now remember, the seller had it posted for $5,000, and in this condition it is definitely not worth $5,000, but he did say he was flexible on the price, so I let him start the negotiation. I simply told him this: so I know you said you had a little bit of wiggle room on the price, considering all these issues with it and the fact that it's going to need to get towed, what's your solid number for me to take this off your hands? And what he did is he took $1,000 off the price right away. He told me I could have it for $4,000. So now instead of me trying to beat him up from the $5,000 down, he already did some of the work for me. So now I'm not negotiating from $5,000 to a lower price, I'm negotiating from $4,000 to a lower price. So I told him $4,000 maybe if it didn't need tires, since tires are so expensive, and you also never mentioned that in the ad. I said take $500 off for the price of tires, since that's probably how much it's going to cost. Take $100 off for the tow and I'll give you $3,400 right now. He agreed. It was a fairly reasonable price, since he agreed that he forgot to put that in the description. So he shook my hand and we made a deal at $3,400. So I paid him the cash, called the tow truck, and I headed home to wait on the truck. Now while I'm driving home, I want to talk to you guys here about some negotiation tactics. I always try and teach a different lesson in every one of my car flipping videos, and there's always a slight difference on how the deal goes. This one went real smooth, but the main point I want to let you guys know is try and let the seller start at the negotiation. There's an old saying in sales is that the first person to name their price loses, so let them start. Maybe someone with less experience buying a car would have asked this guy, oh, instead of $5,000, will you take $4,500? Of course he's going to take $4,500 because he was willing to take $3,400. So let them start and then go down from there. So all in all, the best practice is sometimes just shut your mouth, let them do some of the work for you, and you'll probably get a better deal. So after a few hours of waiting and $120 later, the tow truck finally arrived with my new truck. They dropped it right off in the driveway, and now you guys know know what time it is. It's time to start fixing this thing up to get it ready for her new owner. So you guys know how I do it. We got a good sized checklist here with everything wrong with it. So let's start with the most important thing and let's get this thing back on the road and fix those brakes. So now going back to earlier when I was explaining how brakes work, they're powered by hydraulic pressure that squeezes the brake pads against the brake disc, or in this case, this truck has both brake disc and drums, but the same principle applies. There was no pressure in the braking system, so I assumed there must be some kind of a leak. So the first thing I did was pop the hood and I checked the brake fluid reservoir to see if anything was leaking out. This part here is called your master cylinder. I pumped the squishy brake pedal a bunch to try and get some kind of a leak and see if I can figure out where it's leaking. I checked under the truck, all the brake lines, I checked all the calipers and the drums, and there was absolutely no sign of a brake fluid leak. So what happens sometimes, it can leak here by this master cylinder by your brake booster, but also if it doesn't show a leak, it can actually be leaking internally. Since I couldn't see any physical brake fluid, I figured that it must be leaking internally. So for only $31, I was able to pick this one up from online, and when it came in, I took a baser, I sucked out all the brake fluid from the reservoir until it was nice and empty. Then next, I disconnected all the brake lines coming off the master cylinder. Now once all the brake lines are removed, there's two nuts holding the master cylinder to this part here called the brake booster. I got both of those out, and with those nuts out of the way, I was able to pull out the old master cylinder, toss it in the trash. I placed a new master cylinder in place, re-secured it to the brake booster with the two nuts I took off, reconnected all the brake lines, and now we got our new master cylinder. So now anytime you remove any brake lines, you have to bleed the system of all the air, because if there's air in the system, it doesn't create enough hydraulic pressure, so your brakes won't work properly. I performed a full brake bleed on this truck, and I actually have a video on how to do a brake bleed all by yourself if you don't have help around. And I'll also leave that in the description for you guys. And you guys can see here the brake fluid that came out of this thing is so nasty and old. It must have been many years since this was done. And I actually got a water bottle filled up here next to it with clean brake fluid. This is what it should look like. So you can see it has been a long time since this thing was done. So now after the brake bleed, we got a nice strong brake pedal that does not fall to the ground anymore. We got enough hydraulic pressure to stop this thing in emergency situations. And you can see the obvious difference here in the pedal. It doesn't go all the way to the floor anymore. So our brakes are working perfect. Let's cross the brake job off the list and move on to the next thing. Now the last thing mechanically wrong with the truck was that dead RPM gauge. So let's get that fixed. The first thing I thought, it was a fuse. So I popped open the fuse box and I tested all the fuses and all of them were good. So it wasn't a blown fuse. The next thing I did was pop open Google to see if it was a common issue and to see if there was a known fix. I found this forum dedicated to Nissan hardbodies and I saw someone else had this exact same issue. So I checked out the link and read that someone had this exact same issue, but it was a loose connection here on the battery terminal. So I popped the hood and you can see this battery terminal has a bunch of wiring come out of this positive lead. So I went ahead and I pushed everything together nicely. I tightened this bolt here. I walked back to the truck, not really expecting it to work, but I was super stoked that the RPM gauge just came back to life. Trust me, things usually don't work out this easy, but I'm super glad it did. So we can go ahead and cross off the dead RPM gauge off the list and move on. So now we got the mechanical problems taken care of. It's time to get some new tires here for this thing. Now, instead of taking it to a tire shop, I found with this particular tire size, I was actually able to get the cheapest possible tires here from Walmart.com. I found the vendor that sold brand new tires at this size for only $67 a tire with free shipping. So only $295, I was able to get 4 brand new tires shipped and delivered straight to my front door. At like $40 for used tires and shopping around and seeing if I can actually find them, new tires seemed like the way to go. So I threw all the tires in the back of the truck and went over to my local tire shop up the street, and he only charged me $20 to mount each tire. So that's grand total of $375 with the $80 mounting balance. I was able to slap 4 brand spanking new tires on this thing for under $400, so not bad at all. So let's go ahead and cross the tires off the list and move on to the next thing. But first, let's start our money invested chart so we can track how much money we have invested total in this truck. So we got $3,400 for the price of the truck, $120 for the tow, $31 for the master cylinder, about $10 with the brake fluid for the brake flush, $375 for the tires. So we're at $3,936, and all that's left is some cosmetic issues, so let's keep on going. So for the cosmetic issues, I wanted to start here on the interior since the interior was pretty ugly. Now the biggest eyesore was that missing headliner. Usually vehicles have a piece of board that mounts up to the ceiling of the car or truck that holds the fabric up, and this was way out of my expertise to fix. So I called a few upholstery shops, and one shop told me $550. Another shop told me only $500, and I found a third shop that said they would do it for $250 and the center console for another $50. So only $300, and I can knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. So I dropped off the truck, and when I picked it back up, they did an amazing job. The headliner came out super clean, and the center console also looked awesome. It was a super reasonable price, so it definitely pays to shop around. So let's cross off the upholstery off the list and move on to getting that steering column cover fixed. Now with parts like this on older cars, it can be super hard to find them in good condition, but with a little bit of searching on eBay, I found the only one on the entire internet that would fit, and it was blue. Crazy enough, it was $130 $120 after shipping. Now, since it was the only one on the entire internet, I had to make it work. When it came in, I knew it needed to be sprayed because this blue would look silly here on the interior. So I scuffed it down with some 500 grit sandpaper and then laid it down and gave it a few coats here of primer. And after the primer dried, I gave it a few coats of my all-time favorite paint, and that is that trim and bumper paint I always talk about. This paint is awesome. I've used it many times in my other DIY videos. This stuff is just great paint. And now all that's left is to install it, and boom, no more ugly missing steering column cover. So let's cross it off the list and keep on moving. Now, the next thing I wanted to knock out was the missing speaker here on the passenger door. I did a little bit of searching and I found this brand new Sony door speaker set here on eBay for only $24. They were in perfect condition and they were the perfect size for the truck. Replacing speakers usually is pretty easy. They come with an adapter most of the times. You can splice in the factory speaker wires with the small little adapter wires that come here with your new speakers. Once you wire nut everything, all you need to do is screw the new speakers back into the door and boom, we got new speakers. I replaced the driver's side as well since the factory speakers are super cheap junk. I popped everything back in place and we got nice brand new crystal clear sounding speakers. So let's cross that off the list and let's wrap up this interior. So now it's time to strip down the interior and give this thing a nice detail. So to pull the seats out of a car or truck, there's always 4 bolts on each corner of the seat holding it down. Now after you remove those bolts, you can just pull them straight out. So now that the seats are out, I got my favorite cleaning solution, and that is a product here by Lithium called Hyper Cleanse. This stuff is by far the strongest stain remover I've ever used, and if you go to their website, you can use the promo code BuddiesDIY20 to get 20% off everything store-wide on their website. And believe me, they have by far the best detailing products out there. So now that the seat is soaked here with Hyper Cleanse, I hit it with the drill brush, I worked all the Hyper Cleanse deep into the fabric, and after that, I took my carpet cleaner and sucked out all the nasty gunk. After, you can see a huge before and after difference. I did half the seat so you guys can really see the power of this Hyper Cleanse. This stuff is absolutely amazing. So after the seats, I went ahead and I vacuumed all the white dog hair out of this truck. It was literally in every square inch of this carpet, but with a little bit of time and some elbow grease, I was able to get all the hair up. So now I repeated the same process with the carpets. I sprayed a bunch of Hyper Cleanse all over the carpets, worked it in nice and deep here with my drill brush, and then I hit everything with my carpet cleaner and sucked all the years of dirt and grime out of these carpets, and they actually really turned out pretty nice after. I also took the old musty smell out of this thing and it smelled like a brand new truck. So now it's time to throw all the seats back into the truck. Once everything was back together, I wiped everything down with this other product here by Lithium called Inner Space. So now what Inner Space does is takes the old leather and plastic and restore it and makes everything in the interior look brand new. It leaves a nice long lasting semi-gloss to keep everything nice and protects it from the sun and keeps it looking nice and fresh. Now you can even see it makes dull and faded looking plastic like this window crank, door handle, and trim piece over the handle look brand new again. And again, it's 20% off all their products with my code BuddiesDIY. I'll leave all that information in the description below. I was also able to find a replacement visor here on eBay for only 25 bucks. Now replacing a visor is as simple as 2 screws. It's no big deal at all. And I also forgot to mention it came with cut to size floor mats, and it really put a nice finishing touch here on this interior. If you guys remember from the beginning of the video, it was super worn down and ugly looking, stains, missing trim pieces, and now it looks absolutely beautiful like we were back in 1995. I'm super stoked with how this truck is coming together so far. So now we got the truck running smooth and all the mechanical problems fixed, the interior looking nice and shiny. It's time to get the exterior up to par and get this thing sale ready. So the first thing I wanted to start with was something easy, and that was replace that flopping handle. So on eBay, I found a replacement set for only $17. I figured I might as well replace the other side to make them both look brand new. Now to replace the handles on this thing, I had to pull the door panels off. Panels are usually just held on by some clips and some hidden screws. And once I was able to remove the panels, there was 2 nuts holding the handles from the inside of the truck door. I got my wrench and popped those out. And after the nuts were out, I was able to pop the old handle right out. I repeated the process, but in reverse, and I got the new handles on, and it definitely feels a whole lot better opening and closing these doors. These handles look absolutely beautiful, so we can cross the handles off the list and we can keep on moving. So let's go back and update our money invested chart real quick. We have $350 here for the upholstery work at the shop. We'll get another $120 for the steering wheel column cover, and we have $17 for the door handles, $25 for the visor, and another $24 for the speakers. So let's keep moving down the list. So lucky for me, I found this company, Lithium Auto Care, as mentioned before. So what I used to do before I found this product here by Lithium is I used to mask everything off and I would spray it down with trim and bumper paint. Now there is a lot of trim restoration products out there, but most of them are complete garbage. I've tried a lot of them, trust me. But I tried Lithium trim cubes once, and these things are not only permanent, but they are super easy to use. I have a full video on these things, and also my promo code works for the trim cubes as well. That's 20% off everything store-wide using BuddiesDIY20. And right here you can see a huge before and after. It only took a few minutes of cleaning it, prepping it up, and that's really gonna make this interior pop when you look at this thing from behind. So let's cross off restoring the trim off the list and move on to the next thing, which was those little dings here on the truck. Now you can even see this thing from afar, this little ding here on the passenger side of the truck we saw earlier. It looks like a shopping cart or a car door ding. Nothing major, but I wanted to pop it out to get rid of that eyesore. So right here, what I'm using is a PDR kit. PDR stands for Paintless Dent Remover. You can get one of these on Amazon for about $100 depending on how many tools you want. Now how it works is you place this hot glue on this dent puller. You wait for it to dry and then you pop it out and it'll make a nice loud pop like this. So now that I used the dent puller a few times, what you do is use a knockdown tool and you knock down all the little high spots you created with the dent puller. And now you guys can see after a little work, this dent is pretty much completely gone. You can hardly see it at all. So we can cross off the ding off the list and move on to the final touches. Now, as mentioned earlier, the sides of the tailgate were all scratched up. I'm guessing someone, like I said, didn't secure this box and it slid up and down, causing really bad scratches. So it was time to rip this toolbox off and fix it. Now, something pretty cool, I actually posted this toolbox for sale for $100 here on Facebook Marketplace and I ended up selling it for $80. Now, upon getting some red paint and some clear coat and everything to fix this tailgate, it cost me about $80 as well. So the toolbox paid for the paint and everything to fix. How I fix it is I sanded down all the rust from the bare metal being exposed. You can paint over rust, but it'll just start bumbling through the paint. Definitely don't want to do that. You want to remove all the rust first. Now, after the rust was gone, I mixed up some Bondo with some hardener and I filled in all the little holes that were used to secure the toolbox. And then once the Bondo was dried, I used some body filler, which is pretty similar to Bondo, but it's a little bit thinner to give it a nice flat surface. I sanded everything down so the Bondo and the filler was nice and flat, and then I blasted it down with some paint and some clear coat, and boom, we got a beautiful looking tailgate again. So let's cross that off the list and move on to the last thing, and that's to get this paint super crisp looking. Now what I'm using here is just some buffing compound and a drill buffing tool. If you guys are curious what I personally use to buff my cars and the tools that I use, I'll throw that in the description below. Now as you guys can see here, I did half the hood just to show you the difference in how much better the paint is going to look after this buff. It really makes this red nice and deep and it'll really help sell this thing. So after a solid hour of buffing, it was all cleaned up and looking absolutely beautiful. This red paint is super pretty looking, and in the sun this thing shines so bright. This thing came out awesome. So now that we got the interior all dolled up, some new tires on this thing, the exterior looking beautiful, and all the mechanical issues fixed, it's finally time to post this thing and make some money. But first here, let's see how much money we have totally invested in this truck. So we're going to go back to our money invested chart, and since the toolbox paid for the paint, we can go ahead and add everything up, and that comes out to a grand total of $4,472. So as mentioned earlier, I think I can get at least $5,500 for this truck bare bottom, since they are super rare to find in this great of shape, especially the V6 models. And on top of that, this is an extended cab instead of just a single cab, so I know I can definitely get a pretty penny for this. So I took some super nice pictures of this thing showing just how beautiful it came out, and man, these pictures look awesome. So I listed it for $7,000 just to start high. Now with the new car shortage here in America, and especially trucks flying off the shelves here in my area, it did not take long for the messages to come pouring in. The second day I had it up, I had someone who was very interested. Now usually I ignore people who message me just a number like this without even seeing the car or truck I'm selling, but I gave this guy a shot. Threw a number back at him at $6,500 to see what he would say, and to my surprise, he gave me his number, so I gave him a ring. The guy drove over an hour away with $6,500 cash and bought it the same day. Now with pickup trucks, especially in heavy Latin populated areas like here in Florida, will just fly off the shelf. Latin Americans love trucks, and I do not blame them because they're so versatile. You guys remember episode 6 as well with the GMC truck? This thing sold in just a day or two. Now I probably could have gotten a little more, but honestly, a fast nickel sometimes is better than a slow dime. So now that it's sold, we can do some math together. So we got a sale price of $6,500 and we had a total amount invested of $4,472. Let's throw another $100 in for gas, running around, picking up the truck, and that leaves us with a net profit of $1,928. So now let's figure out a rough hourly rate here, because time is money. To fix the master cylinder and bleed the brakes took about 2 hours, maybe 15 minutes to fix the RPM gauge, 30 minutes for the tires since the tire shop's right up the road, the upholstery shop's also right up the road at 30 minutes. Steering column cover took about 15 minutes to paint and pop in, speakers took about 30 minutes, interior detail took a good chunk of time, maybe 5 hours, the door handles took just 30 minutes, less than 15 minutes for the trim, about 1 hour popping a few dents, painting the tailgate took a solid 4 hours since I had a mask off the entire truck, Bondo spray and clear and all that, and about an hour of buffing. So we'll add another 3 hours of miscellaneous things like posting the truck, buying parts, and all the back end stuff. Let's divide the net profit of $1,928 by 19 hours of labor time, and that brings us to a grand total of $101 an hour. Not bad at all. Now, as most of you guys know, these car flipping videos take an insane amount of work, so show your support by hitting the like button and be sure to subscribe to catch the next episode. Now, if you really want to support the channel, be sure to check out my website in the description. For you guys who don't already know, I also sell real solid gold jewelry, and my prices are literally the best. I'm not just saying that. I buy huge amounts of bulk jewelry at a discount, so I'm able to to sell it cheaper than anybody online. Do not pay retail or get ripped off at a pawn shop when I can get you the exact same thing for hundreds or even thousands of dollars less. All my jewelry is real, authentic, solid gold, no plated stuff, and I'm sure I have something for everybody's budget. My contact info will be there and also in the description, so you can talk to me personally and we can find you a beautiful new piece of gold. I'll leave all that information in the description below. And again, huge shout out to AutoTempest.com for making videos like this possible. Like I said, I use them all the time to find deals, and you can too. So be sure to check out AutoTempest.com in the description below. That's all for now, and I'll see you guys in the next flip.